This is Join Us in France, episode 63. Hello, I'm Annie, and I welcome you to the Join Us in France travel podcast. Today, I bring you a wonderful interview with a very interesting lady who is the owner and operator of a business in Paris, a treasure hunt business in Paris, in the Louvre, to be more specific. And she also offers other treasure hunts. And I heard about this from one of our listeners to the show. So thank you, Nicole. That was really good. And she was very fun to talk to. So you have that to look forward to today. I got myself very, very nervous with this interview because I thought that the software I used to record this had failed and hadn't recorded our wonderful hour-long discussion. And I thought I was about to, burst my head up against the wall when my husband fixed it for me. Anyway, I am really going to get me a mixer and do this better so that I don't have those frights anymore. So thank you, Matthew Gamache, who made a donation to the PayPal account so that I can get a mixer for that. So thank you. I hope more come because that's really, really helpful. All right. Here's Daisy de Plume. I even love the name. That's just very fun, talking about that Lou. Well, hello, Daisy. Very nice to talk to you. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? It's lovely to speak with you, too.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I've introduced you a little bit before, but I'm sure the listeners would like to hear it from you. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I'm from New York. I've been in Paris for 10 years. My educational background is in art history. Although before that, Lou, I never actually used my education because I worked in magazines and various other jobs and publishing in New York. And I didn't actually move here intentionally. I came here on a sabbatical from a job, and I was so happy to be here that I went home and I quit my job and I put my stuff in storage. I found a tenant and all of that, and then when I returned, I realized I didn't speak French and I didn't have a visa and I didn't have any means of making money.
Oh, wow.
But it worked out. And I met my husband here, and I have my 4-year-old son here, and I'm very happy.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. But did you meet your husband before you made the jump?
No.
Wow.
I met him in Paris. So Paris.
Wow, so you really fell in love with the city first.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
amazing. That's amazing. That's pretty daring. Most people, are not quite.
Well,
No, I wouldn't say stupid, but you were young and, you're probably still pretty young. So that's the kind of thing you do when you're young, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Not very responsible, but it was,
and it worked out. That's great. So can you tell us about your service? What makes it different and special?
Yeah. Well, I have several antennae of a company called That Lou, and That Lou stands for Treasure Hunt at the Louvre. So the LOU is the Louvre part. And then I have That Door at the Musée d'Orsay, and then I have That Rue in the streets of the Latin Quarter, and I have That Kid and various things like that. And they're all treasure hunts. And for the Louvre one, I could have a family of 4, or I could have a company of 200 people. And what I do for either, a large group or a small group, but most of my clients are small tourist families. What I would do for a family of 4, just as a typical client, the father and the mother would separate into 2 teams, and they would each have one son or daughter with them, and they'd be given the same list of treasure. First, they would, on the website, there are 12 different themes, so it's all thematic. And some of them avoid crowds and avoid Louvre icons and stay in a quiet area. Some of them are hitting the greatest hits, and some, there are various themes. Yeah, so they can choose beforehand. And then once they've chosen, then I meet them at the Louvre, and they split up into 2 teams, and they're given this list of treasure, which is 20 to 30 pieces of treasure. So that's the art of the museum. along with a paragraph about the history of the painting, the artist, the context, all of that. And then within the text, there are bonus questions. So they have to read it, and they have to learn about the art that they're seeing. And then they have two different types of points. They have game points. So they have to find the treasure and then photograph their team in front of the treasure as proof that they found it. And that is like kind of the core of the game. And then if they're good and they read the text and they get the bonus questions, then, for instance, there's a 15th century Iznik bowl in the Islamic collection. And there are tons of these. And as I'm sure you know, Iznik ceramic ware is almost all white with a variety of blues and turquoises and, different colors of blue. They have to find a specific one, which is a peacock one. And there's a crack on the rim. I shouldn't actually tell you, but there's a crack on this bowl, on this very pretty bowl. And so the bonus question is, where is the crack? And so they really have to look at it before they take their picture.
Great.
That's just an
That's
example.
great. And I'm sure it's got to be really exciting for the kids to be looking for something specific.
Well, hopefully, yeah. And my goal is also for because they won't find the amount of treasure that I've given them in the given amount of time, which is like an hour and a half to 2 hours. But my goal is that the families will meet together, the two teams or 3 teams or whatever, will meet together. They'll kind of take a break from the game, and the two teams, the two kids essentially, will want to show the other team, oh, I found this and you didn't find that. And they'll want to go back into the museum and see things slowly and carefully and, without the prism
they
of
might
the
want to go
treasure
back
hunt.
and look at some things that they... Yeah, because it's also timed, I assume. I mean, you also get points for time.
Yeah. Well, so sorry. Organizationally, at the beginning of the hunt, I give these hunts, and then I give the maps that are highlighted as to where their treasure is and all of that. And I explain the principle of the game, but I tell them only do this for an hour and a half or 2 hours, because the excess treasure you might want to find together as a family, But I want it to come from the kids. I want the kids to be the ones who are like, no, let's go back in and,
Oh, that's great. So what gave you the idea to do this?
Well, my mother was an art historian, and I hated Sundays because every day, I grew up in New York, and every Sunday, I had to go to church in the morning, which I hated, and then go to the Met in the afternoon, which I also hated, and I didn't know which part I hated more. And she would actually create not this particular game that I've created, but she created tons of different games to keep me engaged, which obviously worked because of this company.
Right.
It just didn't work at the time. I was a little sour about the whole thing.
Right.
But...
Well, you got to fight with your parents about something.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So are you unique in France, or are there more towns where this is going on?
Oh, well, I started it in Paris. I started 3 years ago. Right now, I'm starting to develop something in London, and I won't probably go into it too much, but that's the idea is that because there are a number of museums that I think they're overwhelming. They've got such enormously valuable, wonderful collections, and there's just too much stuff in them, so people don't really know how to organize themselves when they go. And that's really all I am, is helping people organize themselves. It's not like, it's not like rocket science or anything. So my hope is that I'll be able to expand it to London as well, so that I'll
have
great. I'll have a reason to go back and forth between the two cities. I would like.
And what are some of the themes that you offer? I assume, are your themes like have to do with the age of the children, maybe?
No, not at all, really. I didn't, when I built it, I'd never had a company before. And I was working at the same time, and I didn't build it with a market in mind. And the fact that kids have taken to it so much is cool and
Yeah.
makes me happy, but it wasn't
Yeah.
really, I wasn't gearing it towards children in particular. I do have two themes that are more children oriented because as my markets have grown, I've adapted to them. So for instance, I have something called Animals in Art, and that's pretty, as a theme, pretty
Yeah.
self-explanatory. But
Yeah.
that one is the one. There are three wings of the Louvre, which you know, but I don't know if all of your audience has been to the Louvre. The Richelieu wing is the quietest of the three wings. And the Denon wing is where the Louvre icons like Mona Lisa and Nike of Samothrace and famous works are concentrated. So the Animals in Art is concentrated in the quietest area so that you can kind of get away from the crowds.
Right.
And that's kid oriented also because it's less ground that they would be covering. And then I also have one that called Beauty in the Bestiary. Bestiary are imaginary creatures like griffins and unicorns and dragons, and that's kid-oriented because of the bestiary, but also because it hits the greatest hits, which is a horrible way to describe it, but the most important, the highlights. And a lot of parents want their children to see that, and they need to be seen, but not everyone wants it to be seen through a treasure hunt. So I have, for those two, I do have kids, but the other themes that I have are not, for instance, I have something called, All Things Gaul, and I made All Things Gaul. It's only works by Frenchmen, paintings and sculptures and objets d'art and stuff like that. And teenagers seem to have liked it a lot. It's more history oriented, French history oriented. So I guess also tourists seem to like it because they feel like they're getting they are getting a dose of French history that's kind of tuned into things that they might have seen, like Marie de Medici, and they may have been to the Jardin du Luxembourg, and then they see, like the paintings that were there and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so do you often get just adults taking your treasure hunts?
Yeah, well, I have a few different markets. I would say most of my market is touristic families. Hold on a second. So for tourist families, usually there are children involved, and they're all ages. They're kids. I don't charge, and I kind of always give warnings for families with children that are under 5 years old. Because if they have older siblings, then they'll have fun. But if they're younger than 5, then I'm not really sure how much they get out of it. Other than around a museum, which isn't really, they could be doing anything. But then I also have a whole corporate market, and that obviously is adults. And then I've had a handful of, and I never really know how they find me, but of hen parties. And I had one stag party, but it's been for the most part women.
Okay, I'm French and I don't really know what hen parties are.
Sorry. And actually Americans don't even use the term hen party. I think I've been here too long.
Enterrer sa vie de jeune fille?
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Okay. So it's like before you get married, you have all the ladies have a party together where they usually do something crazy together, and the guys would do the same thing separately.
Yeah, and there are a lot of English brides to be whose best friends organize a weekend of 10 or 15 of their girlfriends, and sometimes guys are involved. It's the friend of the girl who's going to get married, and they come to Paris for a weekend and they do all sorts of things.
That sounds like fun.
Around. And so so I have like a love hunt, and then I have ladies at the Louvre. So obviously that's just powerful ladies and busts of queens and stuff like that, and so that kind of they seem to like.
And so it's always in English, right?
No, I have it in French, and then I have it in Spanish. I have most of the hunts in Spanish because my husband is from Argentina, and so he's translated
Sure.
generously. And I have one of them, which is Beauty and the Bestiary, which is really our most popular hunt because it does hit the highlights of the Louvre in German. But most of my clients are in English, and I think probably that's because I do all of my social media and, you know, I just do everything in English. And so I haven't really, I should probably think about trying to expand the markets, but most of it all of it is in English because I've written it first. But most of it is in Spanish and a lot of it is in French.
So did you have to get special permission from the Louvre to do this, or no? Since people go by themselves, they just have the paperwork you give them.
Yeah, exactly. Before I started the business, I had this idea and I networked enough so that I met some people who worked at the Louvre and I gave them and brought them my idea and, you know, I thought this was a big deal and I wanted their permission and blah, blah, blah. And they kind of poofed their lips at me basically of like, what do you want me to do with this? Like, good for you. I don't care essentially. And I was like, oh, what am I going to, sorry, I shouldn't swear, but what am I going to do? Like, this is a problem. I want to do this and I can't get anyone's attention essentially. So it took me a while, but I went to an intellectual property lawyer who specialized in museum law. And he was a French lawyer who specialized in French museum law specifically. And I asked him if he could ask the Louvre on my behalf for their permission. And he laughed at me very nicely, very gently, and said, you Americans really do like to give us lawyers money. You do not do that whatsoever. It would take me 10 years. There are 2,000 people who work there. Getting the right person's permission would take forever. Just go and start your business. You do not need my permission. It is a public museum. You're not actually guiding them.
Right.
You're not physically just giving them paper and a map. And you're helping them organize themselves essentially. And so I was like, that's not enough. I need clarity. And he sweetly, kind of like humoring me, he wrote a defense for if the Louvre ever said, hey, you can't be doing what you're doing.
That's a good French way to handle it.
It made me feel comfortable. I gave him money as he told me that I should, you know, like my American identity would do or whatever. Everything worked out, and it's true. He was absolutely right. The museum laughed at, you know, like I've now met other people who work at the museum, and I've told them this story, and they've all laughed at me of like, yeah, I know, like of course you think that, but
yeah.
You know, and then same for the Musée d'Orsay. I started the Musée d'Orsay treasure hunt because the AFMO, the American Friends of the Musée d'Orsay, who are very big fundraisers for the museum, they hired me to do a treasure hunt for them for a fundraising thing. And then, again, the same thing. I asked the museum, hey, I have this. Could I possibly do this at your museum, just out of respect, knowing that I actually didn't need their response. And indirectly, I heard from a contact at the AFMO that was again, the letter was read, and they had the same reaction of like, why is she writing me? I don't understand this letter.
It's really a very French thing that, you know, there's some areas where so long as, you know, if you start speaking out loud in a museum, like you're a guide, a tour guide, a certified tour guide, they'd be all over you. Right. So long as you don't do that, they're like, public place, do whatever.
Yeah. And it's wonderful too, because I feel like in the Louvre, the guards know what's going on. If there's a beep of some sort, they appear. But they let you just look. And I feel like there are a lot of, I've been in, and the Met is very much my home. Like I grew up going there all the time. And the guards are like, it's like their little domain of power. Like they can be so mean. I've seen children not even really running, but kind of rushing from one room to another, and the guards getting excited about it. And I feel like the laissez-faire of the guards here is a gift also. It lets people just do art.
I found that when I went to the Louvre in particular, that they were very laid back. I felt.
Yeah.
Now, I did get that impression at Musée d'Orsay.
That's true. They don't like, now they can't say anything about photography after the Fleur Pellerin photograph. Did you hear about
I'm
that?
not sure if I did or not. What happened?
There's a thing called Museum Week. I don't know if you know
Yes.
about it. It's mainly for people who are on social media. And if you hashtag Museum Week during Museum Week, then there are different themes per day. It's a brilliant
Social media thing.
I don't know, social media thing, like way of trying to get people who wouldn't naturally go to a museum to step in a museum and have some fun with the museum. And I think it's a wonderful kind of interactive. Well, Fleur Pellerin, who's as you know, as a French person, the head of the Ministry of Culture, she took a picture of herself and she Instagrammed, or I think actually she tweeted it. I can't remember which platform she did, but she put this picture of herself at the Musée d'Orsay on social media. And photography, as you know, is not allowed at the Musée d'Orsay, and hasn't been allowed since 1986 or whenever it was opened. And just like everyone in the social media world was like, hey, just because you're
the minister,
important does not mean that you're allowed to do that. That is completely unfair, blah, 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 blah. And as a result, photography has now been allowed. This is like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
So. Photography is allowed for museums, and specifically for the Musée d'Orsay, which was famously...
thank God, because that was ridiculous. That was so dumb. I mean, I go in there, first of all, so I'm going to tell you my little story, because this really irked me last time I was at the Musée d'Orsay. I show up with fairly expensive camera equipment, and they want me to check it in these little, they're not even lockers, they're little cubbies. And nobody's going to watch it. They just give you a sticker in exchange. And I'm like, no, I'm not giving you my camera equipment to put in that thing. If it disappears, I'll never see it again, and you won't be responsible. Exactly. So in the end, the guy did put it in a more secure area, and I was satisfied. But then when we walked around the museum, people kept on taking pictures with their phones. Mm-hmm. And they kept on being told off for taking pictures with their phones. And it was just dumb.
Well, yeah, another thing that's stupid is that, and it's no longer the case thanks to the Museum Week snafu, essentially. But the thing that they've been, it's so ambiguous. They were allowed, people who went to the Musée d'Orsay were allowed to take photographs of the building, but not the actual artwork. So you'd have someone who was taking a picture of the clock from a great distance, and there'd be a statue in front of it, and a guard, understandably, because he was doing his job, he'd say, no, but then you'd have someone else standing next to him taking another picture, and they wouldn't get yelled at. So there was this constant double standard.
Yeah. Oh, that's great news that you can now take pictures in the Musée d'Orsay, because that was just one of the things that bothered me the most about it. And I think most museums in France are dropping that. Most places you can take a photo. Yeah. And most people take really, really crappy photos anyway. Like, what are they worried about? Unless they show up with professional equipment and they have a tripod and they're going to do a setup and lighting and you could then take pictures that are worth selling, but
right. The chances are pretty rare.
They would notice that, So that's really good news. So you do Louvre, Musée d'Orsay, and you said something else.
And then on the streets of the Latin Quarter, we have three different routes, all starting or ending at Le Sénat in the Jardin du Luxembourg, and then starting or ending at Saint-Michel. So they essentially go zigzagging. One module goes over and through Saint-Sulpice. And then if you want to do two modules, then you would go over to Saint-Michel, which is over closer to the Seine, and then zig your way back to Le Sénat, but from a different route. You'd go through the courtyard of the Cluny and around the Sorbonne, and where else does it go? It goes into the courtyard. You have to do a little skull scouting for the medical school courtyard, that pretty garden. And then And then if you want all three, which is kind of rare because it's a whole afternoon of walking, but you would then go back to Le Sénat and then walk over towards Panthéon and zigzag your way over through past the oldest tree in Paris, and like you see various things on back to
Wow.
Saint-Michel. So that's the street one, and that is the only reason we built it. We had no plans to expand to outside of museums, but the only reason we built it was because we were hired to do a hunt for 115 American high school students who were here for an orchestra. And yeah, it was fun, but my husband was very much involved in building that, and that was completely collaborative. For the museum stuff, it's been my bag, but and then it's actually, we didn't expect it, but it's been kind of useful for very large hunts where they want to be outside and they don't want
to be in a museum.
Yeah,
because how does it work? Like practically, people go to the Louvre. Maybe they have their tickets already.
Well, so if first of all, they usually don't email me unless they've seen the website, because that's how they find me, because of social media stuff. So they would go to the website and they would see the different themes, a description of the different themes on the theme page, and then they choose what theme they wanted. And then they would go to the booking form, which then filters an email to me. And in the booking form, they would decide if they wanted to get the tickets themselves with something like the museum pass, or if their hotel has gotten the tickets for them or not, or if they wanted me to get the tickets for them. And they'd also decide they'd need to put how many people they were and what the ages of the children were, and various kind of just factual information about the booking, what theme, and then they give me a few dates, and then I receive that and I respond with when I would be free. And also, there's another element, friendly competition. If they wanted friendly competition, this has been, I now have it on my booking page, but it developed completely backwardsly. Families love, or not all, but some families really love to play against another family, because they're traveling and their kids don't necessarily have contact with other kids. And so it's just developed kind of on its own, where if I can find it's frequently I can do this, such as most recently over the Easter break, there have been a lot of tourists, so it's been no problem matching up families. But then sometimes in dry periods, it's not that easy to find another. But it's been really nice because I've gotten emails from people that I didn't even realize that they had stayed in touch, and one family even traveled to meet each other again after, they was from Canada, the other was from California, and they met in Paris on one of these treasure hunts, and then they became friends and stuff. Like, it really makes me happy.
That's great.
But so that's on the booking form, whatever. And then I meet them at the appointed time, and if I've gotten their tickets, we meet at the Bernini statue of Louis XIV in front of the pyramid, and we enter together and go on the express lane, which now isn't so express because of the security measures at the Louvre, but it will be better, I think, hopefully. And then I give them the whole downstairs in the lobby. I give them the whole background of, here's your hunt, this is what you want to do, here you can strategize, and I show them how to strategize on the map, and blah, blah, blah. And I show them where the bathrooms and the coat checks and, the facilities are in case you need it. And then the two families decide how long they want to play for, whether they want to play for an hour and a half or 2 hours, where they're going to meet back. And then I don't necessarily meet them at the end. If it's a standard private hunt, which is most of my market, I do offer a luxe hunt where I'm hired for 3 hours and I meet them afterwards, and then we do a prize giving ceremony and that sort of thing. But I don't do it that often, and I actually kind of discourage families from doing it, because if I meet them, then the chances of them going back into the museum are kind of a little bit, I think they're probably cut in half. Whereas if the family meets each other, or if the family meets another family who's been, then maybe the chances of them going back into the museum, I think, are greater. And that's my real goal. I want people to like what they
Right.
see and want to be in the museum and to see as much as they can while they're here and that sort of thing. The game is just a
Right.
conduit
Right.
to
Well, and maybe
the
you
art.
could, if they email you their pictures in front of all these things, maybe you could award them a certificate later that they completed it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I could. I haven't offered that, but it
Yeah, that would be
absolutely.
one way to handle it. I mean, I can see some children are very intent on finishing and having something to show for it.
Yeah. Well, sorry, then I'm leaving out all these logistical things because I'm not thinking about them. But when I've given them the actual treasure hunt and the maps and showed them how to strategize and given them their Vatlu pencils and all of that, then I also give them and I show them an envelope with the answer sheet and I show them how they read the answer sheet because there are a lot of bonus questions that they wouldn't necessarily know. Some of the bonus questions refer to the blog, the Vatlu blog, and the Vatlu blog has different themes, so articles pertaining to different themes which they can read beforehand to make it like educationally flexible. They could learn a lot more before they actually even get to France or whatever. And in those envelopes, I point out that one, they're going to find out what their score was because the answers to the bonus questions are there. But two, there's a reward, and that the reward isn't really very exciting. It's the gold chocolate coins.
Yeah.
So they're good because they're
Yes,
flat.
yes.
So fit in my
And they're
folder.
chocolate.
But I should probably make the prize a little bit better. But like that, they get a little
Yeah.
something, and a little bit of a conclusion and that
That's
sort of
good.
thing. And they can, I mean, they can hire me, and then I do prizes and stuff. But it kind of depends on how their parents lead them. I kind of feel like they should be reinforced in the glory of the museum being their reward and not really like a physical thing.
Yeah.
And it's children physical things, but do you have children?
Yeah.
Or yeah. How
I
old
just
are
have
they?
the one daughter and she's 16.
Okay, so she's older. Yeah.
But when she was little, she would have probably enjoyed that sort of thing very much. Because when we took her to the Louvre, the first time I think she was 9, 8 maybe, and her French was, well, probably was 8 because her French was still minimal. We hadn't been living in France for very long. And we just put her in one of these arts classes that they have. But it was all in French, and we wouldn't have done it, but she was with her French cousin, who's a year older, and so the two of them just helped one another, and it was fine, and she had a good time, but she couldn't understand that much. So I've told listeners to the show that the workshops that the Louvre itself offers are very educational and very good, but you have to speak French.
Yeah. Which is a shame. They should consider internationalizing it.
Yeah. But they only hire people with PhDs. I mean, these are the people running these
programs.
Yeah, they're experts, and so I don't know if they'd find experts of all the languages that they might want, or maybe they just should relax the rules and not have so many PhDs and let the PhDs do something else. I don't know, but because I mean, leading a workshop with a bunch of kids, you don't necessarily need to have a PhD. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You need to know what you're talking about, but they take
but you don't have to
they take things very seriously at the Louvre, and I think it's maybe changing a little bit. Maybe they're relaxing some things, which would be beneficial.
Hopefully, yeah,
I would think.
Yeah.
So the reason why we're able to talk today is because you told me that there was a strike at the Louvre. So tell me about that, because I missed that completely.
Well, when I got home after I was at the Louvre all morning trying to track down absolutely every booking that I had today because I didn't want people to, show up and not be there and not for them not to have a museum. So when I got home, the first thing I did, but it was several hours after, as you know, the Louvre opens at 9. And I didn't get home until I don't know what time it was. It was like 12:30 or 1 or something like that. And I scoured the internet, as did Hernan, my husband, on all of the French newspapers, all of the French news radio programs, all of the references that I thought should have it, as well, of course, as the Louvre's website, as well as the French Tourist Office website, as well as everything I could think of, because I wanted to find out if there was going to be a strike tomorrow, because I have a lot of bookings for tomorrow as well. And also because I needed to reschedule all of the ones of the people who missed it, who are able to reschedule, who are not leaving France tomorrow. And there was no mention on it other than Sud, which I wasn't even aware of. Maybe you know of it, but I certainly wasn't. It's like a CGT. It's like a union. SUD is some sort of, it stands for something, I don't know, maybe syndicat or something like that. A union for whomever is striking at the Louvre and at the museums. And so they had a reference of the Louvre strike today. But other than that, there was nothing.
Yeah.
Like there was no way for, and if I hadn't been there physically and if I don't have a job which is directly tied to the museum, I wouldn't have known. There's no, or, if I walked by
so
it.
So they didn't open it at all?
No, and there were tons of people this morning because at first, and this always happens, it happened yesterday morning as well, at first they're closed, the lines amount, and the guards, who it's not their fault, and the poor guards they're the face of lots of anger because these tourists are so angry that they can't get in and, have a lot of time and all of that. But the guards don't know whether it's going to be closed for a little while, or whether it's going to be closed for the day, or whether it's going to be closed for 3 days, or they don't know. And so the amounting of people just grows and grows and grows. There's an average of 35,000 people a day, and a lot of people start lining up before 9 a.m. Like it's kind of nuts in high season. And so it wasn't until, I don't know, later in the morning that the guards had a final answer saying, no, you guys have to go away. There is no chance of the Louvre opening later today. We are on strike. And the reason they're on strike, it's, I don't know if you had heard, but at the Eiffel Tower, the elevator guys were on strike yesterday. And as you know, Air France is on strike and all of that. The Louvre in particular, their gripe is that they've been asked to, the Musée d'Orsay, Versailles, and the Louvre have been asked to work 7 days a week and open 7 days a week. And the guards and the people who work there, they don't want to work 7 days a week, which I can understand from their point of view. I've been in France long enough that I'm not like this anti-union person, but at the same time, I don't understand. The Louvre makes so much money. Why they can't just
more people.
Hire more people. Yeah, exactly. They're standing to gain quite a lot more money also. So just like, it's like their security problem. Ever since Charlie Hebdo, every single person needs to be scanned, which is totally fine. I completely understand the need for security, especially in a museum as important as the Louvre or any museum. However, the Louvre has a lot of money. They could get another bag machine, like a scan machine, and help the lines. They make people wait forever, and then it's just
and there's nothing
sense.
You can do to avoid that line.
No, not at all.
Because if you don't want to do stand in line to get a ticket, there are other ways to get Louvre tickets. But
the
security, that's it.
That's and that's everywhere.
Maybe it bears explaining a little bit. The right to strike is a huge thing in France. Always has been. And for instance, if you have your kids in French school, the school will tell you, in public school that is, usually that's where the strikes are. Somehow private school never strikes. They have no gripes. It's just a public school people.
That's because they can be replaced.
The school will tell you that there might be a strike tomorrow, but they won't tell you which teachers are striking, if they are striking. So you know nothing. You're supposed to make your kids go to school when you don't know if there's going to be somebody there for them to teach them,
And also if you have to take a day off of work, or if you have to look for a babysitter,
and it's part of the droit de grève. They don't have to tell you if they're striking or not. They have to make the official announcement. So it has to go through the official channels that it's a possibility. And they have to file a specific piece of paper that says, we might be striking tomorrow. But beyond that, they have to tell you nothing. And they don't tell you anything. And so it's really annoying because, especially when my daughter was younger and we were fresh out of America, I grew up in France, but then I lived away for 20 years. And so I lost a lot of this type of thing. I lost touch with a lot of this type of thing. And so it was just shocking to me that it could work that way. But it really does. Your kid tells you, there might be a strike tomorrow. And you're supposed to make her get up and go to school, and you go off to your own work. But at least with schools, they have to have what they call service minimum, which means that in a village like mine, I live in a tiny village in the south of France, the employees at the mayor's office have to watch the kids.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right.
That's great.
So
it's like obligatory daycare.
Exactly.
Sort of. Oh, but that's really because that, from my perspective, I have a 4-year-old and he's in public school, but so far there's been no. Actually, that's not true. There was a strike only once, but there was a strike at the crèche when he was at the crèche. But so far there's been no strike in his school in the 2 years that he's been there. So it hasn't been an issue, but I wonder, do you think that exists in the mairie in Paris and
there must be some with children? They can't just there's got to be some provisions. They can't tell kids go home.
That is so interesting and smart.
So with grown-ups lining up to buy a ticket for the Louvre, they don't have to tell you anything. You're not their problem. Yeah. But children that go to the school have to have some sort of, something has to, someone has to watch them. And so in my village, it's the employees at the mayor's office that do that. It doesn't happen very often, but it can. And it's very aggravating because you never know. It's like today the air traffic controllers are on strike. It should end tomorrow because they said they were on strike Wednesday and Thursday. And this is April 8th and 9th. But they could file a piece of paper tonight saying, we're doing that again.
We changed our
tomorrow.
Mind.
And it's just a really aggravating thing.
Yeah, it's aggravating, but I have to say,
you're going to be the devil's advocate, aren't you?
With the good comes the bad, and I don't know, maybe you feel this way and maybe you don't. You have an interesting perspective because you're the product of France, and yet you're a complete foreigner after 20 years. You have both sides of the coin. For me, I just have being an American, and the fact that there are so many things that I can complain about with regard to filing paperwork and problems with like titre de séjour at one point or another in my life here, and this, that, and the other thing. There are just so many loopholes not loopholes, sorry, like, what do you call them, that you have to jump through, the things at the circus, whatever. They're problems, but at the same time, the level of the education that my kid is getting for free, that I compare then to the level of education that many of my friends who have stayed in New York, and I went to a very good school in New York, and I have a lot of school loyalty, and I'm very glad that I went to that school and all of that. It's one of the 10 best private schools in the city. But just like comparing a 4-year-old to a 4-year-old there to here, I'm happy with it here. Comparing stuff like free medical service and like knowing that when I lived and worked in New York, I was also in my 20s, so I was completely careless, but I didn't have medical insurance. I had a very prestigious job. I didn't have any insurance. And here, I like, I can get run over,
Yeah,
and if I live, then they'll
you
fix
never
me,
think about those things here. It's true. It's a complicated country, and it has a lot of issues, but I still love living here,
They're wonderful things. Yeah, and we luck out because there are people who are going to fight on our behalf because they're fighting on their behalf because they have the right to do this, that, and the other thing. So it's kind of like I certainly, a day like today is an enormous headache to me. I'm sorry about all of I feel really bad for the families who were so excited about meeting each other and going to the museum and, like having their fun and stuff like that. But on a global scale,
and then you have to handle refunds and all that.
Yeah, which is also annoying because I'm very bad with PayPal, and like the whole thing's been a headache. But on the global scale, I appreciate the goods of the France opposed to
it's funny because we had this discussion with my hairdresser this morning because again, the village hairdresser. Because the public transportation system in Toulouse has been on strike on and off for a couple of weeks. And they announced, so they filed their nice little piece of paper that says it could last until September. Yes.
Oh my God.
And so you never know from one day to the next if there's going to be buses, trams, whatever. You just don't know. And it so happens that the bus drivers that do service in my village are pretty much on strike because every day this week I've had to take my daughter to the city for high school and pick her up at night. I can do it because of my work situation, but geez, for parents. And so now in the morning at like 7 a.m, it's not even anybody waiting for the bus because parents have all organized themselves without the bus.
Yeah, assuming that there's not going to be one.
We just assume there isn't going to be one. But it's really frustrating. So I told the hairdresser, I said, listen, I've never seen a hairdresser strike. Have you? And she's just busted out laughing. She says, well, of course not. Hairdressers never go on strike. I said, well, restaurants don't go on strike either. And she's like, well, that's true. And, it's only certain sector of the public that are... their jobs are like, they're never going to lose their job, And so they know that they can get away with it. And so they do. And so it's good and it's bad at the same time. And I'm going into all of this because a lot of people who listen to the show are also Francophiles. I mean, they want to know about activities that they can do when they come to France, but they also enjoy learning about France. So this is stuff that would be interesting to the listeners, but it's true that it can be pretty frustrating if you're not used to it, But by now I'm used to it.
Well, and also for you and me, for you, not really if it's so long term. If you don't have a bus for 6 months, that's just nuts. But for you and me, relatively speaking, a day like today where Air France and the Tour Eiffel and the Louvre and I don't know, something functional like the metro in your area isn't a big deal. But if someone has saved up and their entire year is looking forward to this 1 week in France and everything goes awry, then that can be very disappointing. It's especially if you have kids who are this is their one experience. And it's not to say there aren't plenty of things to do in Paris where you don't actually need to be in a building. There is so much to get out of this city and out of this country. But it's not what they've planned. It's not what they're looking forward to. It's not what they've read about. It's not the whole thing is, I can understand the disappointment
and French people are so used to it. We just roll with the flow, right? We just go, oh, geez, not again. But then we just find some other way, and we're just used to it. But foreigners are like, kill, and they can't. They shouldn't anyway. Please don't get that mad. They'll start working soon enough.
It's not worth it.
So anyway, all right. Well,
Well, thank you, and I wanted to thank Nicole for putting us in touch. I think she left she left a message on your Facebook
Right.
page, and I just appreciated
She took your
that.
tour, and then she said, "Hey, you should mention that on the show." And I was like, "Mention what? I never heard of this."
It's very nice of her.
So that was very nice, and that's how it's supposed to work. It's we're just a bunch of people trying to have a good time. Word of mouth. Yep.
Yeah.
So if people want to find you, say again how they can find your website or your Facebook page or whatever.
So all of my contact is, the actual website is the name of the company, and that's THATLOU, thatlou.com. And then from there's a booking page. All social media is under my name, Daisy de Plume. So it's for Instagram, for Twitter, for Facebook, for Pinterest, for like all of these different things. It's at DAISYDEP as in Peter, L as in love, UME. And yeah,
how much is your service? We didn't talk about money.
Oh, sorry. For the treasure hunt, there are plenty of different things, but for the actual treasure hunt at the Louvre, it's 25 euros per person, not including tickets. If they want me to get their tickets, which I always kind of discourage, it's 18 euros per adult. Children enter free. Children under 18 enter free, or if you're an EU citizen, children under 26 enter free with proof of ID. And then that kid, which is a supplemental pack of exercises like spot the difference, connect the dots, Mona Lisa puzzle, like all sorts of things like that, which is a supplemental thing. Then that's 15 euros. And then that door is more expensive because I have to build the treasure hunt per order, as the museum changes its collection every 2 weeks. And that's 35 euros a person. And that roux is kind of by order because it depends on how many people and how much organization is involved.
But all your prices are going to be on your website, and when people order, they'll...
Yeah, all the prices. And because we are going to expand to London in the next 6 months probably, then there's a possibility that our I don't know how I'm going to manage this because I didn't expect that Lou to grow so much, but our website address actually might change because it won't be that Lou. It won't be at the Louvre. It will be that Brit in Britain also. So I'm going to have to kind of rework it, but I'll jump that hurdle when I get to it.
That's not hard.
Yeah,
no,
I hope
it's not. You've managed it thus far. You'll be fine.
We'll figure it out.
Well, thank you,
so
Daisy.
much for the chat. It was really enjoyable.
Thank you. And I hope to go on one of those tours when I'm in Paris next.
Yeah. And I hope we can have coffee one day.
That would be lovely.
I would love to. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Daisy.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
This brings us to the end of another episode of the Join Us in France Travel podcast. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful time preparing your trip to France. And remember, if you want to talk back, I love to hear from listeners. You can ask questions on joinusinfrance.com or follow me on Twitter at Paris Podcast, or search for Join Us in France Travel Podcast on either Facebook or Google+. And if you're old school like me, you can also email Annie@joinusinfrance.com. I want to thank listeners who support the podcast by going to joinusinfrance.com/support. By doing that, you can help us earn a sales commission from retail giant Amazon. So before you buy anything on Amazon, go to joinusinfrance.com/Amazon, click on your country flag, make your purchases in the usual way, and then we earn a small commission because we sent you there. It doesn't cost you a penny more, and so it's a really good win-win situation. But remember, first you have to go to joinusinfrance.com/Amazon. Thank you. Talk to you soon.